Production is back with its amazing video where we discover history. So today what we are going to discover? Today we are going to discover class 6 chapter 3, that is in the earliest cities. Okay, so let's begin. What all we will be discussing in this particular video? We will be discussing how Harappa got discovered and what is the story behind its discovery and what is so special about this city and what was all the life in the city and what it was like to live in the city and what were all the new crafts that was there in the city, and also where did people moved from one place to another in search of raw materials and what all the raw materials that people were using. And then we will go through two of the cities that were found in the Harappan town in Gujarat. And ultimately, we will be talking about one of the very mysterious things that happened, and we will get to know whether that mystery was resolved or not. So let's begin. So the very first thing is, how do we discover Harappa? So what happened is 150 years ago, railway lines were being laid in Punjab upon the sites of Harappa. That time nobody knew that this is the site of Harappa. And and Harappa basically presently it is in Pakistan. So what happened is when the railway lines were being laid down, thousands of bricks were taken away from the walls of the buildings to build the railway line or to lay down the railway line. However, archaeologists found about 80 years ago that it was actually the most oldest city in the subcontinent, and they therefore discovered the very first city, and all the cities that were similar to it they called it Harappan, and they found out that this site was actually 4700 years old. Okay, here is a map which shows all the Harappan cities that existed back then. See, Harappa is here, Rakhigarhi is there, Kalibangan, Ganveriwala, Chanhodro, Dholavera, Lothal, so Mohenjo-daro. So these were all the cities that were found uh, in the subcontinent. Okay, moving ahead. So what was so special about this city? As you know, every city has its own speciality. Delhi has its own, or Mumbai, or different cities has its own speciality. So in the similar manner, what was so special about this city that we are talking about? That is Harappan city. So here the cities were actually divided into two or more parts. The western part was smaller, but it was higher, and it was called as citadel. Whereas eastern part was larger, but it was lower, and therefore it was called as lower town. The walls that were there, they were made up of baked bricks, okay, and the walls were very strong because of their interlocking pattern, and that is why they lasted thousands of years, okay. And some of the cities had a very special building like Mohenjo-daro. Mohenjo-daro existed on the citadel, that is the western part, and Mohenjo-daro had a special tank, and the archaeologists call the special tank as Great Bath. So let us look at some of the great features of Great Bath. Okay, so this Great Bath was lined with bricks. Here it is a picture of Great Bath, and it was lined with bricks. It was coated with plaster. Natural tar was also used to make it watertight, and there was steps present. See, here the steps were present on two sides, and there was all around the rooms were present on all the sides. And then there was a well, and well was used to supply the water, and it was also probably drained after the use. And it has also been suggested there is a probability that this well was used by important people for taking dips on some important occasions. It is a probability. It is just a suggestion. Okay, moving ahead. Let's talk about its houses, the trains, and the cities. So most of the houses here had their own bathing areas. In the similar manner, today we have our own house and we have a separate bathing area. So they also had a separate bathing area, and some of them also had their own wells so that they can get the supply of water. And most of the cities had their drainage system, well laid out drainage system, and those drains were covered. And in order to avoid any stagnation of water, there was a gentle slope so that the water could flow through it. And drains in the houses were actually connected to the street, to the smaller drains, and ultimately it led into the bigger one. So all these three houses, drains, and streets, they were planned and they were built at the same time. It was not that houses are being made in different times, and the drains are being laid out in different times, and street on different times. They were all scientific. They were all very scientifically and very strategically laid out and planned at the same time. Then let's look at what was like the life in the city. Okay, here we can see some buildings, the wells, some toy kind of a thing. Here is a steel. So there were rulers in the city, and these rulers were the people who actually planned the construction of the special building in the city. Okay, so what rulers used to do is they used to send people to distant places so that they can get the raw materials, the best of the raw materials like metals, precious stones, and all the other things that they wanted. And at the same time, there were scribes. So scribes, their work was they knew, they actually wrote, and they helped in preparing the seal. We will get to know what seal and what is sealing. So scribes were actually helping in preparing the seal. Okay, and however, most of the materials have not survived today. Now talking about crafts and toys. So there were craft persons. They were both men and women, and they made all kinds of things. And there were many terracotta toys have also been found in the Harappan cities, which actually showed that the children must have played with these. So here is a toy that is made up of terracotta, and children played with this toy. Okay. Then what were all the new crafts that were used in the cities? So most of the objects that were made and have been found in the Harappan cities were made of stones, shells, and metals. And what was all the metals that people knew about and people were actually using were copper, bronze, gold, and silver. And copper and bronze were used to make tools, weapons, ornaments, and vessels. Similarly, gold and silvers were also used to make ornaments and vessels. Today also we see gold is being used for making ornaments, jewelries and everything. So there was Harappan seal, okay, and this seal was rectangular in shape. And if you see here, this is a seal. It is not very much visible, but here it is a seal, and on that seal, some animals are carved on it. So it used to be in rectangular in shape. Okay. Harappans also used to make pots with beautiful black designs on it. And there has also been found that the evidence of clothes, cotton clothes, and they were found on the lids of the silver vase and some copper objects at Mohenjo-daro. And in order to spin the thread, so thread was also there. They used thread, and in order to spin that, they used spindle wheels, and that was made of terracotta and fire. Okay, so the many of the things that were being produced at Harappan were probably the work of specialists. So who are these specialists? So specialists are basically the one who were trained to do any kind of work. Okay. So let's look at some of the crafts over here. Look at this bead. So these beads are made up of carnelian, and carnelian is a beautiful red stone. Okay. And this stone used to be, cut, and then they were shaped and polished, and finally a hole was made over here so that a string could pass through it. Okay. Here are some stone plates that are shown. Here, if you see, is a sculpture, and it shows a very important person. Important person, as in this person must have certain kind of a position in the society, And here is a statue, and it was found from Mohenjo-daro. And you can see he is wearing some kind of an embroidered garment. Okay, and here is a stone weight. Okay, this weight, see its shape. It is very rectangular shape. It is very carefully, made, and precisely the shape of it. Just look at it. And it was made of stone, a special kind of a stone called chert. Okay, and these stones were used to weigh the precious stones or metals. We came across a word in the previous slide called faience. Okay, this faience. Let's look at it. What faience is basically. So faience is different from the stones or shells, because stones and shells are something that are found naturally. However, faience is something that is being made. So in order to make the object and in order to glue it together, people used a gum. Okay, and a gum was used to give shape to the sand or powdered quartz into an object. And then that object was glazed, and after glazing, it resulted into shiny glassy surface. And usually the color of the glaze was blue or sea green. Okay, and this science was used to make beads, bangles, earrings, and ties. I hope it's clear. Moving ahead. Now, in search of raw materials, we know that the rulers sent people from one place to another in search of raw materials to build the building and also what they wanted. Okay, so what are raw materials basically? So, raw materials are basically those substances that are found either naturally or they are produced, okay, by the farmers or the herders. So, raw materials are processed to produce the finished goods. Okay, these are not the finished goods, but they are used to process. They are processed to produce the finished goods. The raw materials that actually Harappans used, for them, the materials were available locally, whereas there were some raw materials which they had to bring from outside, okay, from some distant places like copper, tin, gold, silver, and precious stones. So let's look at from where all these metals were being brought in. So the Harappans probably got copper from present day Rajasthan and from Oman in West Asia. Tin was mixed with copper, and thus they produced bronze, and this was brought from present day Afghanistan and Iran. Okay, and gold was brought from Karnataka and the present day Karnataka, and the precious stones was brought from the present day Gujarat, Iran, and Afghanistan. Okay, moving ahead. Now, food for people in the city, what people used to eat. So we know that people kind of started having a stagnation or sedentary kind of a lifestyle. People used to live in one place. I mean, there was a mixture. Sometimes they used to hunt and gather and move from one place to another. Sometimes they remained. So it was not that people all of a sudden a sedentary lifestyle happened. So those who were living at one location, they were growing crops and they were rearing animals. We know that. We have read in the last chapter as well. So the Harappans grew what kind of a crop? Like wheat, barley, pulses, peas, rice, sesame, linseed, mustard. So these were all their diets that they used to have. Now, in order to turn the soil, if they are to plant the seed, so they used a weapon called a plow. Okay, so they use plow to dig the earth so that they can turn the soil and then they can plant the seed. And obviously, they need water. So, what they did is they stored water and then they supplied the water to the field where the plant was growing. And we know that many of the people started rearing the animals, okay, domesticating the animals. So Harappans also reared cattle, sheep, goat, and buffalo. But what happened? We know that people used to move from one place to other, it, either in the search of food or following the movement of the animals or for water. We have read all of these in last chapter. Okay. So what happened in the dry summer, the people used to take the large herds of animals and they traveled greater distance in search of grass and water. Okay, and they also collected fruits like birds, they caught fish, they hunted wild animals like the antelope. Here is a toy plow, okay, that is shown in the picture. And we know in many of the farming communities, still today people use plow, okay. Now let's look at Harappan town in Gujarat, a closer look. The two of the cities that is Dholavira and Lothal, okay. So the city of Dholavira is actually located in or was located in Khadir Bay in run of Kutch, and it had fresh water, it had fertile soil, and this city was divided into three parts, and each of its parts was surrounded with massive stone walls and with entrance through the gateway. And there was also a large open area in the settlement, and there what happened? Their public ceremonies used to held, and large letters of Harappan scripts were also carved out of white stone and they were inlaid in wood. Okay, so this was about Dholavira. Here in the picture you can see Lothal. The city of Lothal actually stood beside a tributary of Sabarmati. I hope you remember what tributary means. I had just explained it in the previous chapter. Okay, and so the raw materials such as precious stones were actually easily available in the city here. And there was also a storehouse in the city and workshop for making beads, pieces of stone, half-made beads, tools for bead making, and finished beads have all been found here in the Lothal. Okay. Now, as I have said that we will be knowing about what are seals and what is sealing. So seals are basically like the stamp paper. Just like today in today's era, we use a stamp paper on any kind of a government papers. We use seals or stamp paper. So earlier also people used to use seals, okay, to stamp the bags or the packets, maybe the packets containing the goods, because we know trade used to happen. So when they were sending their packets or the goods from one place to another, they used to seal the packet, okay, so that it is tied better, and the impression of the seal is known as sealing, okay. So, how did they know that their good has arrived safely? So, if the ceiling was intact, so they knew that their good has arrived safely. Just consider this fact in today's era when you are purchasing something online, in their policy, you will read that if the product is, if you are finding the product unsealed or unsealed, so that is a damaged product or that you can return it. And sometimes you also return it. So in the earlier time also, if the ceiling was not intact, it suggested that the good has been damaged and has not arrived safely. Okay, I hope it's clear. Now let's talk about the mystery that I said in in the starting of the video. So what is the mystery that I was talking about? What happened is a major change suddenly happened around 3900 years ago. And what was that change? That people actually stopped living in many of the cities. Because in the very first slide, we saw some of the cities in the subcontinent, okay? And people were living in these cities and there were a proper lifestyle they used to live, okay? But around 3900 years ago, something happened, okay, and they stopped living in most of the cities, and they stopped writing. Seals and weights were no longer used, and the raw materials were also not being brought from distant places. And it was found that at the site of Mohenjo-daro, a large garbage was found, and the drainage system was broken down. However, we have just studied that they have well planned drainage system, okay, very strategically laid out. However, we are finding the evidence um, that around 3900 years ago, something happened. The drainage are found to be broken down. very less impressive houses started to be building, and even over the street. So obviously you would be thinking, what happened to this city suddenly? So actually, this mystery is still not resolved that what actually happened. There are lots of suggestions regarding that. One of the suggestion is that actually rivers dried up, so people maybe might have moved to other place, because obviously water is necessity. Okay, and the other suggestion is that deforestation must have taken place. People did not have the, you know, maybe they were rearing their animals, so animals could not feed. They also used to collect fruits and roots, so they cannot collect it. And some suggestion is a massive flood occurred. Some other reason is that because of that, all ended, the city ended. And it appeared as if the rulers also lost control. Okay. Sites in Sindh and West Punjab, that is in present day Pakistan, were completely abandoned. And many people moved into newer and smaller settlement to the east and the south. So that was about the subcontinent. Let us look somewhere else, something of a mystery that has actually been solved. Okay, so here we are talking about Egypt, and we all know about pyramids. So what happened is around 5,000 years ago, there were rulers in Egypt, and they also sent their armies to bring important materials like gold, silver, ivory, timber, and precious stones. And they built this large and huge tombs, and they were called the pyramids. And when they died, the bodies of the kings were preserved and buried inside these pyramids, and they were called as mummies. And a large number of objects were also buried along with them. And sometimes even men and women were buried along with the rulers, because they have a belief that there is an afterlife and then they will be having all of it. Okay. In the previous chapter also we studied that in some other subcontinent as well, there was a belief system and people used to bury the goats along. And there was one of the evidence where a burial site has a goat along with the buried with the burial. Okay. So, however, mm, these burials are amongst the most elaborate burials known in the world history. Okay. So, this is something that we know about Egypt. Then there are certain important dates that we have to know and that we have gone through after going through the entire chapter. That cotton cultivation at Mehergarh started about 7,000 years ago. Beginning of cities happened around 4,700 years ago. The oldest city, that is Harappa. Beginning of the end of these cities about 3,900 years ago. Just we saw the mystery that happened. All of a sudden, something started to change, and then the emergence of other cities happened about 2,500 years ago. So that's it. Thank you so much for your patience. If you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. And your review is, again, your feedback is very, very crucial for me. So suggest me if you have any more ideas, how can I improve my video. And do give it a like, subscribe it. Thank you so much.